So we had several questions and comments about one of the topics we talked about yesterday, and that's jobs and the nature of work. So let me just spend a minute or two kind of reviewing some of that and responding to some of those comments. Well, I want to separate jobs from the nature of work, and a lot of the issues in the campaign and since the election have been jobs, jobs, jobs. And jobs are more the short run view of the issue, and the nature of work the long run view of the issue. So in terms of jobs in general, we're not doing so badly. The unemployment rate is under 5%, half of what it was 8 years ago, so that's looking pretty good. Now in specific industries, the issue is very different. In some industries, things are just awful. Mining and manufacturing, not many jobs have been created and relatively high rates of unemployment. On the other hand, jobs in many service industries and knowledge-based industries are coming along just fine. So why that dichotomy? Why that difference? And that's what leads us into the nature of work. Historically, in our nation, we've spent most of our history as an agrarian society. And as an agrarian society, jobs were tied to the land, jobs were tied to the farm. Everybody worked. The work day and work year was decided by the sun and the calendar. And we worked, we produced our own food and consumed our own food. Well, technology, innovation, machines took the place of horses for a lot of that work. We were able to produce more on the farm, move into the city, and begin an industrial revolution and manufacturing jobs. Those jobs were very different than the agricultural jobs. The manufacturing jobs, although there were lots of difficulties in the transition from agriculture to manufacturing, ultimately the manufacturing jobs were a 40-hour week, much less than the agricultural jobs. We commuted to those jobs instead of having those jobs at home, so we needed transportation. The automobile fulfilled that mission. Lots of urban infrastructure came about because of those jobs. And manufacturing jobs held sway really until post-World War II period, at which time we began a service revolution. So we moved from manufacturing jobs to service jobs. Again, the nature of work differed quite a bit. In service jobs, that workday wasn't always defined by a 9-to-5 workday. We provided service for people as people needed the services. And if you think about your consumption patterns today, many of your consumption activity is based around consuming services, whether it's education or healthcare or entertainment, or even back to our agrarian society, dining out rather than preparing your own food, and certainly rather than growing your own food. So what's the next step in that transition? What's the next step in that evolution? Well, it's to a knowledge-based society. And again, there will likely be a huge change in the nature of jobs and the nature of work in a knowledge-based society. If you think about the difference between work today and work 10 years or 20 years ago, it's very different. If you think about just the nature of work, if depending upon your age, if you talk to your parents or grandparents, and you say, well, I love my job. Well, probably a generation or two ago, the thinking about loving your job wasn't all that important. It was going to a job to put food on the table. So the nature of work is going to become very, very different in a knowledge-based society, and so are the arrangements for work. And the arrangements for work are changing. They're what's called an Uber economy, where people contract for very specific bits and pieces of work rather than a long-term job commitment. There's what's called the Hollywood model of jobs, where a number of talented people will come together for a short period of time for a project, complete that project, and then disband. So there'll be as many different kinds of job arrangements as there is technology to help define those jobs. And what's happened in the past couple of years is that it's things like trade and immigration that have been blamed for the job loss and changing nature of work. And really nothing can be farther from the truth. It's innovation and technology that's at the root cause of the nature of some job loss, other job gains, and a very significant change in the nature of work, which we really ought to embrace.